everyone. First, I want to start off with a very, very hearty thank you to all of you for staying here through day 3 or day 2.5. I was worried that we would be speaking to a half-empty audience today, but I really appreciate your vigor and your obvious interest and engagement today. Second, I really want to thank President Obama for nominating me to the Corporation for National Community Service. I've served on that board now for 3 years. It's really been one of the most enriching experiences ever. This past December, I was named board chair, or as I like to say it, I'm Wendy's sidekick. I'm just awed by the leadership that Wendy has provided in this country on service. I know all of you know her, but honestly, she deserves a round of applause. Actually, why don't we stand up and... Yeah, there is no greater cheerleader for national service, and really a very thoughtful leader. So I thank you, and I thank you for teaching me so much in this incredible opportunity I've had. I want to start off with a little bit of a non sequitur, because I've actually been paying close attention. I'm actually a really good listener, although my husband would tell you I wasn't. But I've paid close attention for the past two days, and I had a couple of thoughts. One is I want to start off with a story. I come from a company of storytellers, so every gathering like this, I always take the opportunity to tell a little bit of a story. But so imagine this. In 1922, my paternal grandmother came to the U.S. from Mexico. She was 14 years old at the time, spoke no English, lived with a family in Brooklyn, New York. The wife was the head of the YWCA in Brooklyn, and the husband was a Methodist minister in Brooklyn Heights. And so began her experience here in the U.S. In 2 short generations, she saw her grandchildren graduate from Ivy League schools, become doctors, lawyers, serve in the Army. There's a nurse, there's a financial person as well, there's a business person. And I will guarantee you that there was no greater, more patriotic person than my grandmother. She had a picture of FDR and John F. Kennedy in her home. She became a citizen the moment she could. She taught me a deep love of my cultural history and background, but that didn't preclude the fact that she taught us all how to be great, engaged citizens of this country. Whether it was helping our neighbors at home, whether it was volunteering, whether it was giving the little bit of money from her Social Security check when she was 70 years old to nonprofits that she cared deeply about. And I say this because today, if you are looking at the demographics of millennials, 20% are Hispanics. Of that 20%, the vast majority, about 90%, are born in this country, but the vast majority of their parents are born outside the country. And I bring this up because I know there's been a lot of discussion about the demographic differences in this country and the need for a unifying culture. And what I would tell you is from my experience with millennials today, and certainly from both my experience at Time Warner and my experience in many of the nonprofits I'm involved with, there is no greater generation that truly expresses American values than millennials. They don't see difference, by the way. We see difference. They don't see difference. Who they vote for, who they date, who they'll marry, who they employ, who they work with, who they go to school with, will be completely different than any other prior generation. And I would argue that this generation is poised for the kind of opportunity that we're talking about providing for them here. They want to make a difference. They don't want to work as long as their parents did. They don't care about money as much as their parents did. They're more cynical about government because they haven't seen it work. But to engage them in the kinds of opportunities that we're talking about here today is important and it's necessary. And I would also ask, please do not forget that all millennials need to be brought into this process. So I hope that our next gathering will have even greater diversity, that we'll have the opportunity to talk about this a little bit more, and that we'll hear from some of the terrific young voices that we heard of during the course of the day. I want to thank So a couple of thoughts. First, I want to thank Dan Ping He, who just spoke, who's an AmeriCorps member. And also earlier today, there was a young man who spoke who was misidentified, who's with FEMA Corps. His name is Thomas Trapani. I really want to recognize him for his service. He also recently enlisted in the Marines, and so his service to this country is continuing. And if we can give him another round of applause. So now let's talk about the role of the private sector. I want to start off by turning this around a little, and I want you to think about for a second, what do companies care about? What do companies care about? So besides the obvious, shareholder value and profit, companies care about innovation and excellence. We're in a time of dramatic and profound change in many industries. We care about corporate culture and values. I'm sure many of you saw the piece today about General Motors, and it was a stunning piece about the lack of action on the part of employees, and they even referenced something called the GM salute, which meant crossing your arms and pointing to the people next to you. And all I could think of is if they had more AmeriCorps alumni working at GM, that problem probably wouldn't have happened. The third is, and maybe the most important, as we were talking, is talent. At the core of everything we do, any of us here on this panel or in American industry, it's about people. And we care a lot about recruiting and retaining the best possible people. And we care a lot about the diversity of our workforce. Because as we look towards the future, we see a world that is dramatically changing, and it's important to bring those voices into our company and to ensure continuous innovation. So for me, it seems like there's a very natural fit between what we've talked about here for the past 2 days and really what all of my colleagues here today can talk about, because there's so much more that we can provide, I think, in addition to money and other resources that we have already been putting towards this effort. So with that said, I want to start with Danielle Campos, who's all the way to my right, who's a philanthropy director of Bank of America. And Dannielle, we just started with Dan Ping He, who's an AmeriCorps, Bank of America Financial Opportunity AmeriCorps. So can you talk a little bit about how that came about and specifically Bank of America's interest?
Sure, absolutely. Good morning. And diversity of talent, diversity of the audience. Lisa, you have 4 people from California here. And so we are representing geographic diversity on this panel. So we thank you for being here as well. Bank of America Financial Opportunity Corps was, really is a testimony right there from Dan Ping. I mean, in terms of how critical the work is that we do to invest in young people. But what the Financial Opportunity Corps does is actually align the assets that the bank has, our people, human capital, our financial capital, our philanthropic grants, our subject matter expertise, and then our nonprofits that we work with every day to move communities forward. So an opportunity came about a year and a half ago where we wanted to really bring those 4 things together. The investment of time, the investment of resource, the investment of youth into communities to drive change through financial stability. So it is, when we talk about collective impact, throughout this conference, it's been about private, public, nonprofit, and then also the youth piece. And that's what we have with the Points of Light, with the corporation, with Bank of America, and also a community college, quite frankly, that's created the curriculum. So when I think about these 4 key institutions that we talk about in the service movement, we are there, and that's why we're in our first year. We actually, I shouldn't say, but we're definitely reinvesting because we've seen such incredible impact. And again, I mean, I couldn't do a better testimony to that than Dan Ping, who was here. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Megan, when we spoke on the phone in preparation for this, you talked about the service with heroic skills. And I love that expression. Can you talk a little bit about what that means at Google?
Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about is we all have these common programs, all kinds of engagement, volunteerism, and of course, financial giving. But in addition to that, I think one of the most extraordinary things you could really think about the companies is they're filled with talented people. And thinking about those people and those talents and bringing those skills in whatever service sector needs to be applied is a pretty interesting idea, both in 2 parts. One is the professional with their skills, as well as mentoring the youth to get those skills as they come with us. And so by way of example, you know, at Google we have extraordinary skills around geo. You know, our project actually did the acquisitions of Google Earth and Maps, and I know this team's really well. And one of the things during Katrina, the teams contacted us to use the tools to overlay real-time data of what was actually visually there so you could do rescues. That got us started on a whole path of what became Google Crisis Response. So we are uniquely suited as a company when there's a crisis in the world to do a set of things that we're particularly excellent at. One of them is Haiti earthquake, for example. The GOSI satellite goes over. We can quickly work with that partner and get the imagery so that we can post the imagery so all of the responding nonprofits, citizens on the ground, everyone can surf and get a hold of that, and we can start rescuing, planning, getting into those things. It's an incredibly valuable thing that if we had just given cash, that wouldn't have happened in 12 hours. Another thing that we did was our pagers go off when the network goes down in the world. Same thing with you guys, same thing with Facebook and others. So our NetOps guys ran around, they made some slides. In the case of Haiti, we've done it for Japan and everything. Here's what happened to the network. Down, gone. Called our providers in Port-au-Prince. Turns out that the whole landing station was smashed. No more network for all of Haiti. And so we sent 7 pallets of network goods, $250,000 worth of stuff. USAID helped us transport and got it to the teams. And the ISPs rebuilt. And in 2 weeks, the network came back. So instead of waiting, so we could have given $250,000, but it wouldn't have had the same results. So the same thing, IKEA doing work for crisis response around furniture and building. And think about what every company, Walmart, what are they good at? And those employees, you know, in Japan, when tsunami happened, our tech teams, every time we respond, we add some new idea because it's so inventive. One of my favorite ones was that we held up the website for the Tokyo Transit because it was crashing because all the people in Tokyo were trying to get home. We held up the sort of dark fiber for Japan for 3 months for a third of the network because the cables had been severed. So just those are examples of sort of heroic service that you can bring as a company.
I would
to land it like with our youth. Let's engage the kids. Let's think of, in addition to the million jobs that might be in the traditional sectors that we're thinking of adding, there might be millions of other jobs that are internships in these programs that will also teach those kids geo skills or network skills or whatever it is, and they can come to be this kind of heroic person in service as well.
Yeah, I actually, Wendy, there's an idea for a tech AmeriCorps here.
Yeah.
So I believe it was you, Meg, who said backstage actually, that many of the opportunities that are provided in service today tend to be a little on the lower skill end, but wouldn't it be something if sort of the equivalent of a Teach for America or City Year, we would create an opportunity for those young people with high-tech skills to serve. So I love that I love that idea.
Like Code for America.
Yeah, like Code for America. So Meg, we had a great discussion about LinkedIn. You run LinkedIn for Good. Can we talk a little bit about service becoming a professional norm, how perhaps LinkedIn can play a role in this?
Yeah, and I love that term, and I think you guys have heard over the last couple of days the importance of service becoming a norm, becoming a cultural expectation, the social norm, and I think one of the keys to success is baking it into the infrastructure, the program, or the products that already exist in our country. So we do this with our employees. We have one day a month. We love to put the word I in front of everything. So with this, we call them in days. And so one Friday a month, employees are given the day to invest in anything that transforms themselves, the company, or the world. And most employees use this day for service. And it was one of those days a couple of years ago that this employee came up with this extraordinary program called Recruiters for Good. So we do essentially executive searches for nonprofits using, what we know best, which is connecting talent with opportunity. A lot of the themes that Megan was just talking about. And we do these executive searches for free. The employees love it. We love it because we know that an inspired employee is a more productive employee. So this notion of service we do in a self-serving way as well. And then in addition, on the professional norm side, so that's what we do with our employees, but what we do with our 300 million members, how many people have a LinkedIn profile? Excellent. keep your hand up if on your LinkedIn profile you filled out the volunteer service field. Wow, fantastic. So you and 5 million of our 300 million members have included as part of your professional identity your service. And this is really, really important because we added this field about 2 years ago because we want to make the idea of service a norm and part of your professional identity. And in addition, we actually guide you through the process. So if you've been on LinkedIn recently, we may have nudged you to say, hey, include your volunteer service. So it becomes that Catholic guilt way of like, gosh, I don't have any service, better go get some service because it's now the norm.
So this is a terrific idea. Meg, can you tell us what percentage of Americans are now enrolled in LinkedIn, and particularly as you get to...
Yeah, so there's I think we have about 80 million professionals in the US on LinkedIn.
80 million.
And we also have the ability to search. And another theme that's come up is this past couple days is service begets service. There's no question that if you engage in service early on, your likelihood of engaging in service in the future increases tenfold. I just did a quick search last night because you can now look on LinkedIn, see people who serve in the U.S. Army, how many of them have raised their hand and say, I want to use my skills for good. It turns out that there are 3 times as many people that served in the Army and want to use their skills for good than went to Harvard. That makes sense, that have LinkedIn profiles. So there's no question. There are some Harvard grads that have also raised their hand that they want to use their skills for good, but 3 times as many U.S. Army veterans have raised their hands. So that's another great way to make sure that it becomes a professional norm and as early on as your career as possible.
Yeah, great. Richelle, you're at eBay, and I'm impressed by the very strong culture you have of engaging employees. Sure. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it might be relevant to this discussion about service?
Sure. So nearly 2 decades ago, our founder, Pierre Omidyar, was really focused on building a company with the conviction that we're more than just a company. And we are a purpose-driven company. And so, the things that we've been focused on are really aspiring to change the world, but changing the world through technology-led and people-centric innovation that ultimately drives to global commerce. And so the things that we focus on really fall in 3 areas. One of them is creating economic opportunity. The other is enabling greener commerce. And the third is power and giving. And so when I think about how our employees actually engage in those, you can imagine that there's a company, a corporate layer to that and the pieces that we do, but then there's the component that the employees actually give of themselves, not necessarily because of the company. And so under creating economic opportunity, we have our eBay Foundation. We have a project called the Opportunity Project, which is all about giving nonprofits grants and actually helping entrepreneurs and people from vulnerable communities to actually thrive. Our community, our eBay employees, actually do even more. They go out and create their own communities within the neighborhoods that they live in. They give time to the nonprofits in those communities. They volunteer. They also recommend them for these grants and do key components like that are all about giving of themselves. And the greener side of things around creating greener commerce, so we do things like we have LEED gold buildings and things like that, but separately we have about 3,000 or so employees that focus on green initiatives. And again, going into into their own communities, creating bike share programs and doing things like that. And then the last piece is power and giving. And so, many people don't know that over the past 10 years as a company, we've given $430 million, and I mean our buyers and sellers have done this, I don't mean eBay, have given $430 million to the 30,000 nonprofits on our platform. But as a company, our employees have also given of themselves. So through partnerships with Habitat for Humanities, we've built homes in India and Brazil and China. We do things all over the community. Just yesterday, one of the big auctions that we have, which many of you have probably heard of, is our Warren Buffett auction that's going on live right now. But we had hundreds of employees that showed up at the church that auction is for to actually feed the people in that community. They serve 800,000 people food a year, and we actually served meals as part of that. So this culture of service is actually embedded in everything we do.
Do you see it as an advantage in recruiting young people? Do you find that, is it something that you talk about in the
It is, and
in the recruiting process, or is it in your materials? Is it a draw, if you will?
It is a major draw for us. So when we go out and do college recruiting in particular, what the students say, what these millennials say, is that I did not realize you were doing so much. I did not realize that giving was such a big part of who you are. And because we've built giving into kind of the core of even our platform, it's actually enabling us to actually draw amazing talent who actually want to be a part of an organization.
I think particularly among millennials, we find that to be a value. I think all of us do. Let me ask all of you a question. What can be done to ensure that service is really valued in the hiring process? Meg, I want to go back to you because you started to talk about ways in which to highlight that in LinkedIn. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Absolutely. We actually did a survey a couple of years ago to hiring managers to try and get a handle on what kind of difference service made in their hiring decisions, and found out that in the US, 42% of hiring managers considered volunteer service equivalent to full-time work experience. In addition, 20% of them said that they actually hired someone because of their volunteer experience. So there's no question that companies, recruiters are making these decisions based on service. On a personal note, I served in the Peace Corps in West Africa, and I have recently been talking about how that service has definitely transformed my own career in 3 ways, 3 attributes of grit, so how I've learned to persevere, agility, how I've learned to figure out things when I don't know how to figure out things, and third, gratitude. And one of the things that's occurred to me is how those 3 notions are such bedfellows to this idea of service. And by the way, those 3 attributes are things that companies like Google are hiring on.
Yeah, very much
and
so.
and I was asked recently, if given the choice, if I had to choose, I was fortunate enough, in addition to serving the Peace Corps, to attending the Kennedy School of Government. Someone asked, which of those 2 experiences was more impactful to your career success? And unequivocally, it was absolutely the Peace Corps. I'm glad I went to the Kennedy School, but the Peace Corps gave me those 3 attributes that I feel are so important to how I've been able to succeed in life.
That's great, thank you. Anybody else on what can we do to ensure that service is valued in the hiring process?
Well, at the bank, clearly in terms of the types of attributes we're looking for, I was with an executive a couple of weeks ago and said, absolutely, the expertise, having financial acumen to some of these jobs is a skill set that we've looked at performance, but it's now that cross-functional integration and how you're flexible to work amongst. And I think that's what service clearly does, those service experiences. But also with respect to the work that we do in investing in service and investing partners like Teach for America, like City Year. But we also have our own Bank of America Student Leaders program where we've taken, every year we take 200 youth, 11th and 12th graders. If you talk about demographic and economically diverse, you have it in this room every year in DC for a week. But we also provide them a paid internship at a nonprofit organization. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary. So we've touched 2,000 youth across the country. And I have an incredible story around having a youth from, I don't know if anyone from DC is in, there's a lot of people from DC, but Urban Alliance. There's an executive director named Nat Cole. Does anyone know Nat? No, okay. Anyone know Urban Alliance? Oh yeah, okay. Well, Nat started as a student leader when the program started, and went to school. We followed him throughout and became an employee of Urban Alliance, and now is an executive director at that nonprofit. So when you think about long-term sustainability, investing early for a moment now, we're doing it through that.
Yeah, I love this idea. I mean, hopefully there'll be practical things that come out of it. We've already heard a number of things, but all companies hire summer interns.
Yep.
And 5 years ago, we at Time Warner dedicated 10% of our corporate interns, and we put them at nonprofits in the local New York City area. And they come to the development programs, they're paid the corporate salary that every other intern is paid, and we place them in nonprofits that we have a relationship with. Yeah. And I have to say, in many ways, those experiences, because you do so much, oftentimes you're the only intern, at that place for the summer, the opportunity to really grow, develop your leadership skills, or really provide true impact in your summer experience is really great. I mean, and that's something that I think as we have this conversation about service, the idea of taking companies that hire, loads of summer interns to really take a portion of those students and really help engage them in service to give them a taste, perhaps, of what could be after they graduate. I think that could be an interesting idea.
Very much, and you could do two ways. One is the direct way, I think, where we should take a set of interns and you could really scale a lot of opportunities very quickly if 10% of the internships the companies were doing were outbound. The other part of that that's pretty interesting is what you said, bringing them back into not only the development program, but actually there's many people in the companies who are already working with that nonprofit or want to. And so that youth can become a bridge. They can become mentored by all the more senior people and do things together. The other thing I think is thinking about internships within our corporate giving programs, because that also exposes young people to how corporations give back. And so there's lots of jobs there.
Yeah. You also, you brought up I'm sorry, one of you.
No, go ahead.
One of you. So let's talk about what else in addition to money could we do. We talked about internships. We've talked about educating hiring managers, valuing service among employers. Can we talk a little bit about mentoring? Is there an opportunity to take executives at the company, help prepare job readiness? There was a lot of discussion about that.
Yeah, I mean, so one thing, several people have mentioned this idea, we just need an eHarmony for connecting, youth with these service opportunities. Well, we actually have this thing called LinkedIn that does exactly that. What we do is we connect talent with opportunity.
And marketplaces and LinkedIn.
Yes. So we literally, today, right now, if you work for a nonprofit and you're looking for mentors, you can literally post on LinkedIn for free. I'm looking for a mentor who is an expert in Gettysburg, in computer science, and has already signaled that they want to serve. You can literally find those people in about 25 seconds. So there's no question, and the appetite, by the way, again, from professionals on LinkedIn and professionals at every one of our companies is huge. They want to be able to connect with these youth, and there's no question that there is a two-way value.
Yep. Richelle, you lead the women's organization also.
Yeah, so one of the things as an organization we recognized is that we wanted to ensure that women had lasting and enduring careers at our company, but even more importantly, kind of stayed in technology. And so we created what is our Global Women's Initiative, which is called our Women's Initiative Network WIN, which is all about ensuring that women have the skills that they need to continue to develop and grow and become great leaders. But interestingly, in order for women to succeed, men actually have to succeed too. And recognizing the importance of gender intelligence and gender bias, and for women, particularly in the Valley where it's one woman at the table of 10 men, getting your voice heard and hearing the voices of others, we recognized how important that was to set women up for the next level of success in their organizations. But also what we recognized is that the other thing that's incredibly important is actually bringing in young women to technology. And so as part of what we've been doing, there's an organization called Girls Who Code, and we've been sponsoring it along with some of the other folks at on this panel, which is all about teaching young girls, particularly from urban communities and underserved communities, how to code. So actually preparing them for roles in organizations like eBay. And for us, it's a code camp that's free of charge for 8 weeks, where girls just show up on our campus. And then also in the spirit of giving back, we have a curriculum of engineers and folks in business who show up and teach these girls every day as part of the program. So not only do they get the experience of understanding how to code, these are girls who've never coded before, but they get the mentorship of people who are actually doing that work today in the environment of a corporation, which is incredibly impactful. And the letters, I get letters from these girls and talking about the experience and what it's meant for them.
You've seen this, it's really, it's across the tech sector. eBay, people are really doing this. We're reaching out, and we all love what we do. I mean, the techies are passionate. And so to bring the kids into the environment where they can really work with passionate engineers. We've been doing unconscious bias training across the whole company to raise a consciousness of everybody about the real challenges. I mean, the weight of history is on us. No more can we feel the gravity of that than in Gettysburg, of the history of leaving people out and unconscious bias and significant actual bias early on, but now unconscious. For example, in media, it's 15-to-1 computer scientists, boys or men, to women in children's television. So, we're fighting stereotypes across the board. We're fighting Big Bang Theory, which is a funny show, but really not all techies are like that.
Yeah,
So the visibility point of service of being present and around diversity, the points that we were making, and role modeling and showing kids how exciting this work can be, and it's in service in the different ways is important.
So I want to open it up to questions. Are there questions from the audience? There are people with mics. I see lots of hands. Okay, so all the way in the back. You can tell us your name.
Yeah, hi there. My name is Eric Garvey. I'm with Target Corporate. So something that I've been thinking about, so at Target we're starting to see a lot more job shares, part-time employees at headquarters. Would your companies ever entertain the idea of a service employee where it'd be a 60-40 model, 60% time at your company and then 40% time working with a nonprofit?
We do that already.
Thoughts, reactions?
With a lot of people. Yeah. We already do that. If people ask, one of the guys working for me he has a day a week of a nonprofit he founded that gets school scholarships, the schools fund. So we're open to whatever employees want to come do. The other thing we've been doing, which is, it's not exactly in service, but we call it returnship. So we've lost a lot of women primarily to leaving to raise children, and we're trying to pull some of them back, especially computer scientists. So maybe when the kids are into elementary school or middle school. And so we have a returnship that we're experimenting with. It's a 9 to 3 o'clock job. And so, just being open in general, as you said, like part-time job shares to that, and not only millennials, everybody really wants to be involved in service, and the thing they're most passionate about in their community, you want to create surface area from your company.
It's an interesting question. Is there anyone here from Encore? So there's Phyllis Siegel, Eli Siegel's widow, has worked with organizations, particularly in Silicon Valley, with sort of the older population, if you will, and giving them opportunities as they leave companies to actually spend a year in service. I'm aware of that. I'm probably not as aware of job sharing. I think all of us, I didn't want to get into it because I didn't think it was directly relevant for what we hope to get out of this conversation, but each of the companies sitting here have really rich employee volunteer programs that offer a lot of time off to serve, as well as resources to help support them. I mean, I came here on Wednesday, and the day before was the Time Warner Community Service Awards. This was the 33rd year that the company did it. And each year we recognize 6 employees who have provided extraordinary service to the communities in which they live and work. And we give them a cash grant of $5,000 to give to their employees. And the CEO hands them their award and check. I mean, I don't know of another company that's been doing it for 33 years. We just renamed it after Richard Parsons, who is a former CEO of Time Warner and a really great philanthropist. But I think all of us, I don't mean to sort of hog up the time, I think all of us do really significant work there.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention about our, because since I have the Global Volunteer Exec from Bank of America here, if I didn't mention our 2 hours of paid time a week that we give to our employees.
We give 40 hours a year, so essentially the equivalent of a week off. There were other questions. You, sir, had a question. Can we bring a mic right up to the front? Or I can repeat your question.
As you're bringing the mic up, I think along these lines, I think the companies are doing this, and I think there's also a marketing thing that we all need to do about service. We call it 1% time, 40 hours, whatever it is. I almost think for Franklin projects, like 1 year, 1%, one country. So we do this for a year as youth. We all do this all the time. And then, thinking about the country coming together.
Yeah, and actually, I'm glad you said that, Megan, because I think the idea that service doesn't end at a particular age or period in your life, of course, it extends for your lifetime.
And it's going on, I think we can shine a light and market it better and attract.
Yeah.
I'm Bob Reed with American Legion Auxiliary. I was wondering if you could address how your organizations could see investing in service years of people that may not be serving in your organization, but what's your philanthropic role in addition to what you're doing in your own work with your own employees?
Well, I want to, Dannielle, maybe we'll start with you all the way to my right, because you fund many of the organizations here. You want to?
Absolutely. I think I would say not half the room, but we clearly, I think it was Rob who said it, and then Alan reminded me yesterday too, about over 25 years ago, we were the first through Bank of Boston to support City Year. And clearly that service movement and that service strategy is, sorry, I should have let you apply. I know the word time, is just embedded through all that we do in terms of service as a strategy. When we look at our philanthropic issues, we have housing, hunger, jobs. If we talk about a hunger partnership, first and foremost, that demonstration is the volunteer hours that are there and what our volunteers are doing in that space. Then we also invest in service organizations, City or Veterans Corps we haven't done yet, Financial Opportunity Corps, Teach for America. Most of the folks that have been on the panels, LIFT, you heard about the Shriver Corps yesterday. So we clearly, see it as an investment and something we need to do to move the country forward. And then we also be able to align areas like financial stability through the Financial Opportunity Corps, because that's core to who we are as a company. We believe in moving financial lives back forward.
I would also add to that all of us here also have a great presence on boards.
Yeah.
So if you look at the boards of many of the organizations sitting here, and I don't want to make light of this is real work and commitment on the part of executives who are engaged in really trying to lift these organizations and support them. So.
One of my favorite ones, there's lots of different buckets of cash giving from, I think, all the different companies, whether it's research and scholarships, and that. One of my favorite ones is the ERGs, the Employee Resource Groups. So we have 19 ERGs that flash mobbed up from everywhere. I'm the exec rep for the VetNet, for Gagelers, for Googler, American Indian Network, and together with some others for WomenNet. And each of those groups of Googlers, just like the eBayers or others, are very knowledgeable about the organizations and nonprofits and groups in their sector. And our VetNet team really pays attention not only to volunteering they do around resume coaching, et cetera, but cash giving to all kinds of organizations. So it's one of the most effective givings because people from the sector, from that community, are helping you give that money. And so really good work happens that way. And they bring their time.
Yeah. There are a number of vet groups, and I'm having a moment where I'm completely blanking out on the name of the organization, but we recently signed up with an organization that pairs vets with mentors at the company, and the employees are trained. The responsibility is to sit down and provide career advice. It could be helping to do a resume. It could be making introductions. It's very much kind of job focused.
And may I just give a quick example as well? So I mentioned earlier that we have 30,000 nonprofits on our platform. And that's actually incredibly important because our community actually enables these companies through gifts. But we have a feature, we're one of the only organizations that have actually enabled giving into the platform. So one of the nonprofits is Team Rubicon that got mentioned earlier today, which is all about sending kind of these highly skilled veterans into these areas that have tragedy and actually helping. So we got a phone call from the guys from Team Rubicon. They needed to show up in Haiti and they wanted to show up in 2 days. We elevated their charity at our checkout, which is a feature of the checkout, which allows them to get donations kind of more visibly through marketing efforts on our platform. And so that's one of the ways that our community, our buyers and sellers, are actually enabling amazing companies like Team Rubicon to do the work that they do.
This is an area that's really important for people to know about, which is the reasons why our companies are successful is because our products are working, and so they're working in the business sector, et cetera. And so therefore, if a nonprofit can leverage them in some form, usually you can get great success. So for example, we have, the Google AdWords that come up when you do search. We give those for free in Google for Nonprofits, hundreds of millions of dollars of advertising. And an example would be, I remember a nonprofit coming and asking us for some money. They wanted $10,000. We said, how about we'll teach you how to use this? And they raised $1 million. So we can capacity build you in the same way the corporations, but in free ways. So I think thinking about, and part of that in service with the youth is teaching them these tools. Because they'll then make their organizations, whether they're going corporate or nonprofit or government, they'll make their groups more agile and capable with the kinds of tools that we offer the business sectors in the nonprofit sector.
So I want to close because we've run out of time, but I want to go back to each of you just on a final word. General McChrystal opened this up on Wednesday and talked about big, bold ideas. What would you love to see? What would you love to see more of? I think let's start with you, Megan, because I love the idea of the Tech AmeriCorps. Yeah. I know Wendy left, but
I think.
But so
I have an idea called,
creating quality service opportunities that have
for technical people to do technical-based service, and I think that's a diversity group. I call it heroic engineering. And I work in the Google X team, which is the team doing the self-driving car and Google Glass and Project Loon. And really, we call it 10x moonshot thinking. Kennedy says, let's go to the moon. And so there really are technologies, and most of us in this room are probably not. I have a mechanical engineering background. I actually came to it for service because I wanted to do green energy post-Carter. Economics changed that a little. But there are the kids who want to have impact, who are interested and passionate about technical things and using engineering and science. And it's not lost on me that MIT was founded in 1861. I'm on their board, as the Civil War was going. And William Barton Rogers said, in a service way, we found this university for the nation, for the opportunity that the nation has ahead. Yeah. So I want us to, in addition to the low skills.
I want to go through the Richelle.
Yeah.
I think there's an incredible opportunity for young people to explore the notion of service, but to the point that we made earlier through organizations like ours. Yes. So as we tap into so many incredible organizations, like I mentioned, the nonprofits that are on our platform, how do you enable the community of either interns or the girls who code or whoever it might be to actually tap in and actually experience the pride and joy and grit that comes with service, and for them to recognize that through the opportunities that are placed in front of them.
Meg, you had a big idea.
Yeah, well, I think to make this work, we have to make service a professional norm. Like, it has to be clear that service is not just good for the organization in our country, but it's good for your career, and it's something that companies want to hire for. So as much as we can continue to drive that home, and I feel very passionate that service, as I mentioned, was the single most determining factor in my own success for both soft and hard skills.
Great, thank you. And we'll finish with you, Dannielle, who we started with earlier.
The pipeline piece is, I think, a piece that when we, HR is coming to us now and saying, who should we work with, who are the partners that are doing service organizations that we can tap into as a pipeline. So if we can all, as companies, create that pipeline from national partners or local organizations that are doing service and bring and pull them through, I think would be in a really good place.
Excellent. Thank you. And can we thank you all.